Okay, so you're welcome to our Sunday's class. So today we are going to learn about grid. So what is grid? How to apply grid to your project, adding spaces, how to repeat columns of same unit, how to use auto rows and grid auto columns, how to use minMax function, how to use auto fit. So what is grid? CSS grid layout is a two-dimensional layout system for the web. It lets you organize content in rows and columns and offers many features to simplify the creation of complex layouts. So grid is more powerful than Flex. You can use grid to create the entire page structure of a web app. So what is grid layout? Grid layout is a collection of horizontal and vertical lines, creating a pattern against which we can line up our designed elements. They help us to create layouts in which our elements won't jump around or change width as we move from page to page, providing greater consistency on our websites. A grid will typically have columns, rows, and then gaps between each row and column. The gaps are commonly referred to as gutters. So that is what grid looks like. But to help us understand this definition or this explanation, let's move to the next slide. So how to apply grid to your project. So applying grid to our project is as simple as adding flex. So what I'm going to do here is to duplicate this, shift alt arrow down. So I'm going to change this to grid, so you can use any name. Then I'll comment this out so that it's shown as one. So we have this structure. So how do we add grid to that? So we'll add two things: display grid, then the template columns that we want. So we have 4 boxes there. So let's see what happens if I add 2 columns. So let's go back to our CSS. So I'm come here and I put grid section. So you always add comment just to help you locate your CSS in case there's a feature update. So dot grid, so I put display grid. Now just to give us a view of the boxes, so I put dot grid dot box border 1 pixel solid blue. So grid template columns, so I'll put 200 pixel 200 pixel. So now I've done that, the output will look like this. Now because I put 2 columns, so it's 1 2 1 2, so it does not stretch to occupy. So the number of columns you provide determine how the boxes will show. So if I add 2 more columns, 200 pixel 200 pixel, so that is going to stretch, you see. So that is how we add our grid. Now just to add a spacing, so add margin top of 3 rem, so that will give you that space. Nice. So the next thing now is go to this other one. So using the repeat function, now you can see that this approach here of writing this is kind of tiring. So what if you have like 10 columns? So grid template columns, use your repeat functions. So you just put the number of columns you want and their unit. Now you use the repeat function only when the units are the same. So remember, just like in Flex, I can, according to design, a box in the grid item might be bigger than the other. So if that happens, then using this repeat function will not work for me, because I cannot specify the exact box of that grid. So using this method will help you easily solve that problem. So just know when to use a CSS unit and when not to use it. So you notice it's the same output. Nice. So if we add a gap of 20 pixels, remember the gap are commonly referred to as gutters. Gap of 20 pixels. So we'll have this now. So you see those gaps. Nice. Sorry, excuse me. So that is how we add that. Now, how to use grid auto rows and grid auto columns. Now the grid auto columns, what it does is it just automatically gives us an auto column. Then this grid auto rows is just specify the height of each of the column. So what I will do now is to remove this. Let's see what happened. Grid auto columns. So I put 100 pixels. So let's see what happens first. So you notice this is how it looks like. Then grid auto rows. So let's put 100 pixels. So you notice now, so the grid auto rows just specifies the default height of this. So I think this is not giving us our expected results. So maybe I have missed the right scenario for it, but that is okay. It's not something big. So this is how it looks like. So if you want your grid items to have a default height, use your grid auto rows. So for now, let's use the grid template columns. So that is for this slide. Then how to use the minMax. There's something I saw there. Okay, I did that and it still didn't do. Okay, so the minMax. Now we can use the minMax to make the grid auto rows responsive. Now to create that scenario, just imagine, let's say I go to our VS Code. In this my grid items now, I put lorem 20 at Z. So let's see the output. So you notice there is an overflow. So let me make that to be lorem 30 so that the overflow will be visible. So you notice this now. So what if I want the height to grow? So that is when I will now specify using that minMax in this grid auto rows. You know, this grid auto rows specifies the height, so I'll use minMax. Then the minimum I want it to be is 100 pixel. Then the maximum I want it to be is auto. So if I do that now, it's like adding a min height to a height. So what this will do now is the minimum height is actually 200, is actually 100, but because there is a need for it to grow, so it has allowed it to flex. And you also notice that the other grid items also increased along with this. So that is how we do that. Then how to use the auto fit. Now the auto fit, it allows you not to specify how many items are in your columns. So let's say I add another item here. So dot box dot 5, then inside it I have 5. So let's say I have this one now. I come here, you notice it will come here 5. So using this grid, using this auto fit and minMax like this will make it easily accommodative. So as long as there is room for it, of course this box can enter here, so it will make room for it. So let's update that. So we'll replace here with, so I'll just comment this out for reference purpose. So this will be auto fit, then this will be minMax. So the minimum width should be 200 pixel and the maximum should be 1F arrow. So up to now I have not explained what 1F arrow does, so let me explain that before we use it here. So you notice here, if I go back to my code, you notice this is just is not full width. So 1F arrow is a CSS unit that is unique to only grid. So you notice the way flex 1 space 200 works, that flex 1 there gives it like a full width proportion. So it is equivalent to each of the box having 100%. So they should occupy the same space. So 1F arrow means 1 fraction. So if I give it 1F arrow, means all the box should have equal space. So that means there will be no available space for this scanner. That this available space will not be here. So if I do that, add 1F arrow, so that is what will show on our browser. So you see there's no available space, so it has all stretched. So that is what the 1F arrow does. So bringing it back to here, remember the scenario that I want to create now. I want to see if we can accommodate the 5th box using this auto fit and max of this. So let's see, and it does. So you see, so we have 1 2 3 4 5, and by this we'll make our flex, our grid item, very responsive. So you see how responsive it is. So if you want to make your grid items responsive, use this auto fit and max width simultaneously. So you see, so in the next video or in the class, I'm going to show you how to apply flex and grid to our Figma design. So if you have a Figma design here, this didn't. So I'll show you how we add that to our Figma design. Poor network, couldn't load. I thought it has loaded all this while, but let me just use something else. So from our Figma design, we'll have some things that we can flex or use grid. So you can choose either to use flex or grid. So there are some instances where I want to do something, I'll just use grid or I'll use flex. But if you understand them, you can use them. You can use them without an issue. So, but one principle I use for outer grid content, for outer content, I like to use grid. Then to flex a content to flex something within that grid content, I use flex. Sometimes depending on the responsive part, so that is why I use that principle, because with grid is actually easier for you to manage space and convert to responsiveness. But flex can also do that, but it's just my own preference. So that is it. So in class, I'll show you how to apply this to your project.